Welcome to the Sunday Summer Series, Bookish Conversations with Beauty and a Book Brand. I'm Shannon, the host for today's conversation, and I will be speaking with Liz Bullard. Liz is an avid reader, author, and coach who loves genre hopping both in writing and reading. Her passion for reading fuels her writer ambitions, which includes her stories, the Prophecy series and the Lyra Summers Mystery series, praised for their fast-paced plots and vivid characters. When she's not storytelling or helping writers with creative blocks, she's trying out new recipes or enjoying long walks with her corgi, Preston, who adds excitement to her life. Hello and welcome, Liz.
Hi, Shannon, and hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, we're glad to have you. Okay, so jumping right in, can you share the moment when you realized you wanted to become a writer?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of go back and forth with this. So, like, I started writing during the pandemic and my love grew there. But I
Okay.
think really being intentional about, I want this to be part of like my day-to-day life, I would say probably was like this year, like the start of this year. I was
Mm.
like, let us lean into this gift a little bit more. Last year I was kind of like, I launched my debut novel and things like that a couple of years ago, and I was just like, oh, I like this. Is this viable? Let's give it a chance. And then this year really being more intentional. So I would say really this year being intentional about this love and this passion. So that's where it started.
Wow. So, with the pandemic, like what was happening back in like 2020 that kind of fueled that fire? Do you mind talking a bit about your writer journey over the last five
Absolutely.
years?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's hard to believe it's been that long, right? And so um it started out like self-care. So a friend of mine was starting a writing group just to bring connection with folks. We all started out saying, we're not writers, we just want to have fun and connect. And, we started out doing these 5-minute prompts that turned into 10-minute and 20-minute prompts. And, we would take turns. So whether it was Apple or she went to the store, we would start writing. And from then we learned about NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. And we said, well, why don't we give it a try? And why don't we see if we can make longer stories? And from that, and I started a prompt. It was Leo, New Moon, Portal, which is how the Prophecy series got started, right? With these 3-word prompts. And I said, okay, for NaNoWriMo, can I make a full story? Can I do this? And by the end of the month, I had hit, 50,000 words. And yeah, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, well, I took it this far. What happens if I go a little bit more and a little bit more? And from there, getting over it kind of like took the nerves and the anxiety away of saying, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to publish. I was just seeing, can I get to the next step? And from there, I was like, oh, there's a series here. I created the first book, which readers may not know. So Portal was the first thing I completed. But after I got through with that, I was like, there's another book that has to come before that. And so then I wrote New Moon, which became the first book. And so I kind of did things backwards. Again, didn't know exactly what I was doing. And so in practicing self-care, I found a passion.
I love that because writing definitely can feel like nurturing your soul, right? And nurturing your imagination. So I really love that for you, like that it became kind of a safe space for you during
Yeah.
such a volatile time, the pandemic. And again, congrats on completing 50,000 words for NaNoWriMo.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Just a little side note, I tried doing it and I couldn't make it.
It's
So
hard. And like
yeah,
it was helpful
it is.
having friends and like just
Mhm.
kind of like pushing each other, but it is hard.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So that speaks a lot to you and your passion and your writing,
Thank
like in
you.
general. Yeah, great. So who were your biggest literary influences growing up? And so growing up, as well as within those last 5 years in growing as a writer, like who would you say were your biggest influences and how they
Yeah,
shaped your work?
absolutely. It so a couple writers come to mind for different reasons. And they didn't really start as like a kid. This was more recently. So as a kid, I read everything, right? I remember starting out reading like the Dick and Jane novels, right? That's how I learned to read, like See Dick Run, Jane Runs Fast, all of that. I read fantasy, I read all these different things. And so as a kid, books in general, right? I remember reading The Coldest Winter Ever in like middle school, right? So as a kid, just books in general. As an adult, where I kind of, you get busy, you stop reading and things like that. I've had fallen off, and I remember going to the bookstore in like 2008, 2009. I went to Barnes and Nobles, and I was trying to get back into reading for self care because, again, we had the recession and all of that, and I'm just like, let me go back to my first love to kind of help me through that. And the bookstore attendant gave me the first book in the Alex Cross series and the first book in the Stephanie Plum series by Janet Ivanovich. And from then, it really sparked a love of reading as an adult, and for mystery and for storytelling and for characters. And so if I had to, name someone, I would say Janet Ivanovich or James Patterson. And then kind of also at this leg of my life, Therese M. Clarke. She is an indie author who writes romance for smart Black women, and seeing how she writes our stories just like really inspired me to tell our stories more bolder. And so I would say really later in life, I started looking at writers differently versus just a love of books.
Yeah, definitely. I love how, like you said, like back in like 2008, 2009, during the recession, similar to like with the pandemic, it kind of, you're like, how do I nurture myself in writing and reading, just literature in general, is that way of self-care. So I love that.
1000%.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And so like talking about like those literary influences, like James Patterson and Janet, when it comes to your storytelling, like what is your process in genre writing? So like when you're writing mysteries, when you're writing thrillers, also on touching on like what you said, like putting characters like us in the book and making sure that your characters are authentic to like our kind of experiences. How is that for you in your writing?
Absolutely. Like, I really get excited about this question because I think my mystery story really brought me closer to there. So, with the Lyra Somers mysteries, it was different because it was a different genre. She was a different character. And I brought in pieces of my life a little bit more. Like, it's in the fantasy more of like the idea of people or the idea of experiences, like connection. But with Lyra, I really took what are the experiences that kind of define a Black woman, or when I think of the Latinx folks I know, when I think of this type of person, I really thought about that to ground these people and make them real. And for me, stories start with the characters, and it really was about Lyra. It was about her journey with her mental health and things like that, but also her relationship with her friends. And for me, it was, something would happen within the story and it would spark a memory of something. I'm like, how do I pull from this memory to make it feel real for the readers, to make it that relatable experience? And so for me, it's really about experiences and really being authentic to the character, because if I don't do that, it really doesn't matter about the plot because you're not going to believe it anyway. And so I really try and make the characters in the little nuances important and real to them.
Yeah, and then it's like an experience for us as readers, like going on this journey with your characters. We're experiencing everything that Lyra is experiencing. Yeah, definitely. So in this journey, what would you say was like the biggest moment for you, or like one of your most favorite memorable moments in this journey?
Yeah, I think having advanced readers. So that was something I knew I did with the mystery and the thriller. Because I knew I needed some other voices to kind of, or some other support to help get the word out in marketing and all of that. And so I said, hey, I wrote this book, and I need some people to read it in advance. And I used this app, Fable, which you can do like connect with readers. Yeah. So, yeah. And so that was really cool because I was able to create a group and to see people in real time have reactions, to put comments, to put their favorite quotes, to do all of that. And that was so different than writing by myself for months or a year and then putting out and waiting to see, okay, what do people say? And so having that real time data it was exciting, it was motivating, and I think it really was different. I think that also helped to say like, oh, I want to be an author. Like I want to do this more often. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I'm on Fable. So I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but that must be so exciting to like have other people, reading your work and getting excited for you. You're like, oh my gosh, we all are excited together.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? Because like your stories mean something to you, but then
Yeah.
when you hear from someone else, like, that really helped develop the relationship between Lyra and Tomas, because I'm like, well, maybe he's just going to be like a one-off character, and they're like,
Mhm.
they really love him and they want to see more of these two together, and so it made it fun.
Yeah, and then I'm sure your readers love that because you're using that feedback to then
Mm-hmm.
develop the story, so I'm sure that they appreciate that. I love that.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
And so before we wrap up here, I do have a kind of fun bookish fact in question. So the first novel ever written on a typewriter was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Do you have any interesting facts about your writing tools or your writing process?
Ooh. The first one that comes to mind is, so sometimes I will take names from people I love, nicknames. And so a character in the story, Pidge, who is a pigeon and who is like Lyra's baby slash best friend, that name Pidge is a nickname that my grandmother had given to my older brother. And so I know, so like I try and infuse these like little pieces, or like the release date is like my brother's birthday or my mom's birthday or like my birthday. So like there's usually a personal connection to something within this process.
That's so sweet. Yeah, and that makes it like so, personal to you. And then
Mhm.
if readers get to learn that, then, it's like a connection to the author. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's so sweet. Yeah.
Yay.
Welcome back to the Sunday Summer Series with Beauty and a Book Brand. We are here for our second part of our conversation with author Liz Bullard. Thank you, Liz, for joining us. Happy Sunday.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back, and happy Sunday to everyone.
So we're going to jump right into the questions. How would you say you handle writer's block? And what advice would you give for aspiring authors?
Absolutely. Yeah. So with writer's block, I think my mental health and therapy background really helps. And so I try and treat writer's block like a symptom. So when that's coming up for me, where I might be struggling with a chapter or a scene or a part of the story, I start to ask myself why, right? Like, is it that I'm overwhelmed? I'm putting too much pressure on myself. I haven't put up the laundry. I need to take space. And so if you're at a place where you're struggling with writer's block, especially if it's continuous, start to ask yourself, why is this coming up? Is it more mental in the sense of like you're putting, like it's imposter syndrome, or you're putting too much pressure? Is it that you just forgot to have fun that you're writing and creating these characters? And so get more curious about why this is coming up versus looking at it like this is just a part of the writing journey.
That's awesome advice. And I agree, like sometimes when we have things going on outside of what we're trying to focus on, it does impact our process. So I definitely,
1000%.
yep. So how do you approach character development, and what do you consider essential in creating like compelling characters?
Yeah, this makes me excited because I love my characters. I think they're so important to the story. I love to read character-driven stories. Like I'm all about the characters. And so for me, sometimes like I'll have like a framework, an idea. Like For Lyra in this story, I knew she had dreams, and at first I thought she was a little bit more timid, but then as I started writing and putting her in these situations, I'm like, oh, she wants to be tough, like super tough, almost unlikable. And so I leaned into that. And so for me, characters come from hanging out with them, from putting them in situations and seeing what feels natural to the story. And so really through crafting, that's where I find more of them. So sometimes their names will even change, or who they are will change from where I start. And so I would say give yourself permission to play with these characters, even put them in scenes that may not even make it into your novel. Like, what would they do if they're at the grocery store and they forgot their wallet, right? How do they react? And that will really help you make them feel real.
That's awesome. That's really good advice. What themes do you find yourself repeatedly exploring in your work?
Yeah, I find like there's a lot of like mental health themes, whether they're struggling with anxiety or trauma or how to express their vulnerability. There's a lot of empowerment and personal growth. And so sometimes that's the strongest part in it. It kind of plays, first, and then the plot is second, but it's really about their journey and who they become and how these challenges shape them.
How do you feel like you balance that? Like, so are you able to balance like the plot, the character, and the setting? Or do you find that you focus more on one over the other?
Yeah. Sometimes I really feel like the characters are leading, but then I'll have people say, "Oh my god, the plot is really twisty and I really enjoyed the plot." And for me, I think about it like cooking, like you start off and then, you taste it and you're like, "Oh, it needs a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that." And
Yeah.
so each time I edit, each time I pass through, like it's like, "Oh, there's another layer that needs to be, this scene or this character, there's a moment." And so I think for writers, I think the more you reread your story, the more layers. It's easier. Your first pass, you may really focus on just what is the story, what is that plot, and getting that out. And then you're like, okay, the character needs to come because it's missing that. It feels a bit flat. And so don't get stuck if you're just like, oh, everything's not there. Make a note of it and like have that, be a layer that you add when you pass through.
Good. That's really good advice. How do you stay inspired and keep your writing fresh and engaging?
Yeah. I think for me personally, like reading movies, like feeding your creativity is really important. Um Good and bad, right? Like, you read a book that you don't connect with, you watch a movie you don't connect with, and it's like I can do something better, I can do something more inspiring. Or you read something and you're just like, wow, I love how that touched me. And so I think feeding that creativity is really helpful. And just the physical practice. So like I write with a writing group most days during the week. And so that habit of just constantly practicing writing helps it pairs with the inspiration, because like I'm like, oh, I open my computer, I know we're getting ready to write. And so I think asking yourself what fuels your creativity and just making writing a practice helps you to be consistent.
That's awesome. I like that you say like you get with your writing group as well, right? Because when you have
Mhm.
community, I feel like that community fuels a lot of what we do, and
Absolutely.
it develops like what we're trying to accomplish, So that's really good that you have a
Absolutely.
community. In your opinion, what is the most rewarding aspect of being an author?
Yeah. I think the most rewarding is seeing how your words touch someone. Again, you're crafting alone a lot of times, and you sometimes get inspired or you kind of get delivered from things through writing, and then to see other people be inspired. I had someone tell me that, they were going through something and they would pick up my book, and that helped them have some escape and to also learn how to heal themselves. And so I think being able to just touch people with your words is like the most rewarding thing.
That is like, I know that a lot of people use literacy in books and stuff to get through different moments in their
Yeah.
lives. What would you say is a role that social media plays in being an author in today's society?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, it's really important. You see authors start off being indie and then they blow up on Book Talk, and then they have publishers and agents seeking after them. people find your book, right? So like if you don't post about your book, no one knows that it's there. And so you have to talk about your book. Even if those first couple of reels and things don't go anywhere, the more you talk about it, people will find your book. And so I think it is very important for authors to use this tool to connect with readers and, anyone else they're trying to reach.
I agree. I feel like social media has helped like to share information that wouldn't normally be known because
Mm-hmm.
you're able to reach people who are not like in your area or
Yep.
things like that. So I definitely agree with that. How do you feel about book reviews and do they influence your future writing projects?
Yeah, this is a good one. So I really like reviews because it helps me have that feedback. It helps me say like, okay, what am I doing well? What do I need to tweak? Um, Again, I think the biggest thing is all feedback is not good feedback. So, sit with it though, but have the vulnerability to like read it, sit with it. If your initial thing is like, I hate it, go back after you kind of pause and process and say, like, do you really not agree with it? Or is there some facts there? And sometimes the answer is no. Like sometimes I've seen reviews, and I was like, absolutely, like I don't agree with that. And like that's fine, right? I get to have my opinion and the reader gets to have theirs. If you are reading reviews and it's making you not write, it is not the time to read reviews. Like read reviews when you can have a critical eye and just really look at the feedback, look at the marketing. Like read my reviews so that I can find like, oh, I'm going to put this section and put it out there so that people know that this is what is really great about my book. And so look at reviews as a way to help you. But if you're not at that point, don't look at it at all.
Yeah, it's kind of like what they say, like don't read the comments, right? Because you have to
Facts.
wait till you're in like that headspace to receive it and say, hey, this is actually something that will be helpful to me. Um,
Hmm.
as long as I like come into it with an open mind. So I hear you.
Absolutely.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for authors today?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is finishing. Like finishing your story, finishing your project, just finishing. I think the statistic is like 80% of writers who start out creating a book do not finish. And
Wow.
like you have to finish. People spend so many years working on a project and it never gets out there. And so I think we got to break up with our relationship with perfectionism a little bit and be vulnerable and put it out there. Yes, your first book is not going to be amazing because you're just starting. Like you're going to get better each time. You're going to get better with feedback. You're going to get better the more confident you get. And so you have to have the vulnerability to say like, this is not my first book is not going to be where I stop. I'm going to grow, but you have to finish. And that's going to help you challenge any of that imposter syndrome that says you can't do it and all of those things. Even if it's not book related, finish something so that way you can challenge that thought that says you cannot do it.
Yes, I like that. I like that how you connected it to real world, like real life,
Mhm.
everyday life, right? So things that we get started on in our everyday life, like once you finish it, you will feel some sense of like also confidence, right? Because you're like,
Yes.
oh, I did that. Like, so
Mhm.
that's really
Exactly.
good um, to share with our viewers. How important do you think it is for authors to maintain a connection with their readers? And how do you achieve that?
Yeah, I think it's so super important. I think about book two in my series, Chasing Nightmares, book two in the Lyra Sommers mysteries, and hearing readers say, like, when is the next book going to come out? Or hearing how they loved the first book. And it was really motivating during those times where you question, oh, God, is anyone going to read this? Does anyone want this? I'm putting stuff on social media. I'm not getting a great response. And so having that connection with your readers is so important and it becomes fun. It becomes a community of like, oh, I know they're really going to love this or like this is going to drive them crazy. And it becomes this reciprocal relationship of this back and forth. Yes, it's still your story. Yes, you're taking it in a direction, but then you give them these little nuggets or these Easter eggs to keep them excited. And so I really love that.
Yes, community, right? So like
Yeah.
once you get to know like who your readers are and like you said, like things that they like or dislike, or like, oh girl, why'd you do that to me? Like it
Yes.
becomes like really motivating, really
Hmm.
motivating. What upcoming projects are you excited about? And can you give us a sneak peek of like what it'll be about, like a plot or something?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you about the most recent one, and then I'll tell you about something later in the year. So the most recent one is coming out on June 20th, and it is Chasing Nightmares, Book Two in the Lyra Summers Mysteries. And in this one, the readers wanted a little bit more of Lyra and Tomas, and so I gave you this, but I don't know if you'll be happy about all of what I'm giving you because she's also going to drive you crazy, in good old Lyra fashion. And someone that she loves is in danger, and she's working to balance kind of growing her community, right? She really struggles with being independent almost to a fault, or sometimes even to a fault. And so she challenges a lot of emotional themes as well as the mystery. Now, the other is my fantasy novel, which is coming out October 17th. And this one is concluding the trilogy portion. So I have books one, two, and this is three, concluding this portion. But I think there's more stories that need to come out of this series. So I'm thinking of, I think within this series, there's going to be like trilogies and duologies and standalones and things like that. So these characters will be back. So keep a lookout for that.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait. So you said June, which date is
Tw- June 20th is book two in the mystery.
okay. And then October
17th.
17th. Okay. For the last book for the trilogy. All right, guys. So
Hmm.
you heard, make sure that you go out and support, and definitely read all of the books so that you can follow the story. Are they standalones, or do you need to read like book one, two, and three in order to follow the story?
I would say you have to read book one, two, and three. I
Okay.
like to end with a little bit of a cliffhanger. You could pick
Yes.
up one book and kind of know what's going on. I try and like loop you in, but there is a little bit of, of progression, but you're not going to be totally like lost. But I think reading it will definitely help because, again, I love a cliffhanger. A nod to the 90s where you watch it like a cartoon and it's like, stay tuned for the next episode and you're waiting 7 days. So sorry, y'all, I'm a millennial.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I think that it's important, right, that we have stories and experiences where we do have to wait and we practice
Mhm.
patience. And it's not just like everything just coming, like quickly,
I love it.
automatically.
Mhm.
So I love that. If you could collaborate with any author, living or unalive, who would it be and why?
Yeah. I think I'll go with like one of my favorite authors, James Patterson. I love his style of storytelling, the pacing, the plots. I think I'm really strong at characters and I want to grow in making my plot super twisty, especially with some of the mystery stories that I want to tell. And so I think with him also being a master at co-collaboration with his stories, I would learn a lot of different elements of storytelling. So I would choose him.
That's a good pick. He's definitely a good pick. I love his books. How do you measure success as an author? And has that definition changed over time?
Yeah, I think in the beginning it was just about finishing the book, right? And getting over those nerves. And it's changed a little bit since then, right? Like, yeah, I still want to finish and I want to have a sustainable career, right? To be able to have writing and my stories be the main income generator in my life. So that way I could just tell them all the time. There's so many stories in my head. And so to be able to do that on a daily basis and not so infrequently would just be a joy.
Yeah, I definitely I understand. Like when you have a passion about something and you want to do it full time, like is definitely a motivator and a push to do so when you're passionate about it. What legacy do you hope to leave through your writing?
Yeah. I always say, like with everything, like I'm just trying to leave this world a little better than I found it. And so if my stories can be a way of just leaving some lights, helping people deal with the problems that they face, letting them know you can be super anxious and be super brave, right? One is not exclusive to the other. Yes, you can struggle with relationships and trauma and still do great things and solve problems. And so if I can help people see themselves, I think that would be the greatest legacy.
Yeah. For publishing, how has the publishing landscape changed since you started, and how have you adapted to these changes?
Yeah, I think maybe the biggest change I've seen is AI. So whether to use it, the ethics, covers, all these different things. Do you use it to write your book? Do you not? With all these tools, even integrating it into their process, even if it's editing. And so I think the AI discussion has been the biggest thing. I
Mhm.
think, it also kind of taints people. Like sometimes I've seen some meanness around this topic. And so I think just trying to keep an open mind, respecting people's decisions within their business and how they run it, respecting creativity, respecting artists, and trying to do no harm to them. I think that is where I am, whether someone uses it or not, I'll let that be a different discussion, but just trying not to model the meanness that is starting to be birthed through this.
Yes, I agree. Even in education, I'm a high school English teacher, and we recently had a training that was about how to use AI in your classroom.
Mm,
And a lot of the teachers who signed up for the training were like on the fence. I would say about like us using AI to develop or generate journal
mhm,
prompts, but not allowing students to use AI for their journal responses. And so there was a lot of conversation about like, okay, if we're doing it, why are we not allowing them to? And
mhm,
my biggest, like, the thing that I shared was that for me, okay, if we use it for journal prompts, fine. But we also have the skill set to know how to create
mhm,
journal prompts if we did not have
mhm.
the artificial intelligence, whereas the students are still in the learning process. And so I think that if they learn the skill and they know the skill, and then for an assignment or whatever, if they need to use it, um if they have those skills already, I would be more open. I think that my struggle with students using it is that they don't have the writing skills yet. They haven't
Mhm.
developed in that way to um like write independently before
Yes.
having this tool. So that, we had a
Mhm.
lot of like back and forth or whatever. But it was good conversation, right?
Yeah, and I
Because
love that response because it helps them develop voice, which is something AI cannot do. It can't replicate what's unique to you and what's given to
yes.
you. And so like I love your response. I think it honors the practicality of like this tool isn't going anywhere, but also the value that we as human bring.
Yes, yeah. So it was a great conversation. I think that when everyone left that training, there were more open minds, but there was also like a goal of like what we want to see our students do, with their writing and with, all of, their future, basically.
Mhm.
And learning the skill is important first, so I'm like, once you know the skill, then
Absolutely.
you're like, okay, all right, like after that, but you need to learn it, you need to have it and not be reliant on anything.
Yes. Love that.
Yep. So the last question is, if you could create a cosmetic product inspired by one of your books, what would it be and how would it reflect the themes or characters in the story?
Yes. Okay. I'm really excited about this one. So I'm going to choose Sleeping Beauty, book one in the Lyra Summers mystery. And it would be perfume. And the reason it would be perfume, like perfume is like layered, right? You can have all these different scents. They evoke different emotions in the room, right? Some people will love it. Some people will hate it. Some people will be like, huh? But everyone is going to have a reaction. There's no like indifference. it leaves a little bit of a aura or a scent to the room. And so I think that sums up my story. Like, you are going to feel some way about Lyra. You are either going to love her or hate her, but you are going to have an emotion about her. And I love that about this character. She definitely leaves an imprint on folks. And so I'm going to go with Perfume.
Awesome. That is a great choice. I find that so we have a subscription box, and when we send like perfumes and different fragrances in the box, the feedback is always something emotional, like, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this scent reminded me, of this time when I visited California, like, so there's
I
always
love
some
that.
type of connection to
Yeah.
a smell or a scent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that perfume is a great like beauty
Yes.
product choice.
Also, I love that you put perfume in your boxes. I got to check those out.
Yes, we do like perfume, skincare products. So like fragrance, skincare products. For the cosmetics, we'll do like eyeliner and things like that. We don't do like foundation stuff, but we do like little things to, give people a little like boost and like how they feel. And so that's where the beauty aspect comes with the beauty
Love
and
it.
a book. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Liz, for joining us. I can't wait to meet you at the Beauty and a Bookstore Tour. Our attendees are going to have such a great time. They're meeting some amazing authors, and I'm glad that you'll be joining us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I can't wait to meet you and everyone else as well.
Yes. How can our viewers reach out to you on social media? You can share your handles.
Absolutely. So on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, you can find me at Liz Bullard Writes. Even on Facebook, not super active there, but like you can find me mostly on TikTok and Instagram and Threads. You can also go to the website lizbullardwrites.com for all the books and blogs and all of those great things.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. And I look forward to meeting you in person soon. Bye, Liz. Have a great week.
You too.
Thank you. All right, guys. So that wraps up our first Sunday Summer Series interview with author Liz Bullard. Um, in the comments, please share. Sorry, in the comments, please share some book related fun facts that you have. So our host Shannon shared a bookish fun facts with you guys. What are some bookish fun facts that you have that you would like to share? Share them in the comments. While you guys are doing that, I just want to end with on Sunday, September 21st, we will be celebrating local bookstores at the Beauty and a Bookstore Tour 2025. The kickoff event will be held in Brooklyn, New York. Readers will be transported to various independent bookstores around the city. Food and beverages are included at the kickoff event. Libro FM has sponsored an audiobook for all registered attendees. We will have self-care sessions, author signings. So Liz Bullard will be there to sign her book. And we'll also have some other authors. Come sip, eat, practice self-care, and shop. Register today. Be sure to select a genre team. Special thanks to our sponsors, Libro FM and DIY Van and Handyman Services LLC. All information can be found on our website, www.beautyandabookbox.com. Thank you so much for joining. Again, my name is Nisha, and I'm so thankful to have you guys viewing our Sunday Summer Series, Bookish Conversations with Beauty and a Book Brand. Have a great week.